Hi, I'm Jonathan DeLeon from Focus First, and today I want to spend a little bit of time really talking about what the role of the pond and the positioning scattergram are when it comes to positioning a listing, not just pricing it. Now at Focus First, we're really big on doing a competitive CMA, not just a comparative one. And what that really is a redefining of the term CMA to really make sure we're counting in market factors and getting really competitive with our pricing so we get buyers looking at our house, putting in offers, and really actually buying it. Now the difference between this and kind of like your traditional CMA is that we add an extra factor of that positioning. Now for us, pricing is based on the past proven value. This is probably what you're most comfortable with. This is really understanding what's sold, kind of comparing your house to it and saying, hey, these houses sold for this much, we can probably price at X. And that's really the past proven value because buyers have put money in and bought the house there. Positioning, though, takes that to the next step because it's really centered around the present competition. It says, yes, houses are sold here, but where is the market going? And what else is available for the same buyers that are going to be looking at our house that we have to make sure we kind of compete against in the right kind of way. Now, to do this, we really want to make sure that we're thinking in the right mindset of we're not just trying to find the value, but we're trying to find that market value, figuring out from the past what range we're kind of competing against for buyers, and then being really present about positioning ourselves in the right needed advantage so we win. And in this case, winning is getting the buyers that are looking at houses to look at ours, to want our house, and to put in an offer so that we're getting the most offers and most traction. Now, Focus First, really big on showing is better than telling, and we believe that visuals can give us great clarity. So because of this, we use three main graphs to kind of walk this whole process. The first of this is the scattergram. And this really tells us the price range of what we're thinking of our house will price about and the range of our competition. Then we look at the pond to tell us what our needed value is and whether we're going up or down based on where the market's going. Then we use the positioning scattergram to compare properties and position correctly based on the pond information and that price range we talked about earlier. Now, the best way to do this, we think, is to walk through a quick example. That way you can truly understand how this whole process works. So today we're going to go through a demonstration, just walking through a simple pricing example, and then jump into the positioning using that pond information so you can really see how this works in concert to get the house listed at the right price, the right market value, and get the right offers. So today we're going to be pricing a house that is basically a 1234 address street fake home, but with real data as if we were in this real neighborhood. Now the main things we're going to focus on here, because we're just going to run through this quickly, is that the total square footage is 3,500 square feet. It's built in 2003. It's a 5-bed, 4-bath, 2-story, 2-attached garage. And overall, it's kept up in great condition, but original finishes and styles. What this means is it's not a full scrape, it's not a full renovation. So there might be some things that maybe don't make it jump way above the rest of the market, but it's probably a well taken care of home. So when we look at this subject property, we can go ahead and circle here. This is the house we're going to use as the fake house, even though this is a real, obviously, image. And then just go off of this as our pricing example. So what we first do, though, is look at the past and what things have sold for in this area. When we do that, then we create this scattergram. Now, a scattergram is a very simple way to show what homes have sold for, and those are those blue dots on this graph. And then create a trend line based on the overall trend from the houses being sold. It's not a true price per square foot because the price per square foot actually is registered very different on all these. But it's an actual true market value trend line that shows what that market value has been in the past when homes have sold in usually a small window. In this case, if you look at the date range, a little bit more than like 5 months. But in this case, we're going to look here, and the ones that are closest to our 3,500 square foot size house are the two that have these text boxes on them. So if I put ours on there and move the text boxes a little bit just to show this easier, you can see that these are the two dots we're going to be comparing against. Now, what we're doing in this case is we're looking at what homes have sold for and have been proven in the past. So we're looking for which of these houses or what characteristics of these houses do we match best. Now you can see that this Chandler Street one, the box on the left, is a 2-story, built in 2004 when we were built in 2003. It's a 5-bed, 4-bath, 2-car garage, and about the same size as us. So we are almost a pure mimic of that house, obviously. Now the house to the right, it's a little bit closer to this line, so it's a little bit more directly on the trend line. The one on the left is just a little bit above the dot. So we're going to probably match that one above the dot, but just down to our side there. When we do that, we kind of look at putting a star right there saying, hey, this is probably what this graph says our house is worth. Now you can look at that, you can say that's probably about what, 720 or 730, something like that, as far as the graph shows, if I go from the left side in. Now most people would stop here and that's your list price. However, the big advantage we have is the ability to look at the current competition and really position ourselves well. And sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower than this, but we want to be the right market value. Now to do this, we're going to stay on this graph first and say, I understand as a real estate professional that the market's always in flux. It's always moving. So I'm going to price based on past data, but still informed by the momentum of today's market. I mean, you can imagine if you went to a car dealership and said, I want to buy that car, but I want to pay what people paid for it 6 months ago, they would probably laugh at your face. So we don't want to do that as real estate professionals. We want to make sure we filter in and say, hey, we know it can go up or down. So knowing that, we're going to look at 2 ranges. The first of this is these green bars that I put on the graph says if the market's going down, we know the value could be a little bit less than what's sold for in the past. If the market's been going up and has some momentum, positive momentum I should say, then it could be up a little bit too. Now that being said, if I was a buyer looking for a house that fits into this range, I might be looking for houses that are a little bit less, a little bit higher, etc., to really have this kind of overlap. Now our goal is to say, what other houses will they be looking at that we will be competing against when they price, when a buyer is looking in our price range. Now to do that, we're going to look at 2 bridge prices just on the outside of this. Now, I know I'm kind of running through this a little bit quickly. We have in-depth videos on really understanding the ranges and everything as part of the Focus First offering. We actually have full classes on this. But just kind of go with me here for a second. Kind of use that intuitive knowledge, understanding, hey, buyers that are going to see our house priced in this price range probably are putting the, realtor.com, or their agent is providing them a list of all the houses that are selling from a certain range to a certain range. In this case, we're looking at the range from $800,000 to $700,000, knowing that our house, which was priced around that $730,000 range, probably could be down to $700,000 if the market's going negative for a little bit and having a little bit of depreciation time, or up to $756,000 possibly, with being in the realm of possibility where an appraiser will still back it up if we have positive momentum. Now, we do this all using the Scattergram, and we use this to inform ourselves for our second search. Yes, we advocate very highly for a second search. The reason why is that first search is very location based to find those homes that have sold in the past and get us the right information on this value. The second search is we want to go into the idea of what will a buyer be looking for. So in most cases, buyers are searching for a price range that they can afford, or a price range that they're approved for, searching an area that they want to live in, and then they start comparing the features of the home, the layout of the home, and the value that they have perceived for what that price is. So if we do that and we say, let's now look at how a price range that they can afford in maybe a wider area than just our neighborhood, but is still in the general vicinity. Maybe it's the same school district, same area of town, same proximity to, a center part of town or whatever it might be. And then we can compare the features of the home. That's how we do the second search, so we can really do positioning well. Now, the way we think about that is we talk about the concept of a buyer zone. So if you look at this example here, the neighborhood that I'm kind of showing you in this picture at least is a small area, but as long as we're in these major roads, it's all the same school district and people are still getting access to the same kind of spot. This would be a buyer zone. Now for our pricing example, it looks a lot more like this. So the bottom left corner here is the actual neighborhood of West Chase. But if we stick in the same school district, the same kind of proximity, cut off by major roads and then open spaces, and overall the same development time frame of southeastern Fort Collins here, the big red box is our actual buyer zone. So we're going to look at the price range that we talked about earlier, that competitive range of 800 to 700,000, in this area where a buyer would want to live, and then we're going to use the graph again to compare those features. So this is our search though, 700 to 800,000 in this big red square, which includes West Chase, but then also expands to other areas that buyer would buy in. When we do this, the first thing we have created is the real estate pond. And this is where I really want to spend a little time and really kind of give you guys great instructions so you understand how to use this graph. This is kind of one of the more powerful graphs to guide us when it comes to positioning. And it's one of those things that we want to make sure we truly understand. So this graph here has a couple of key factors. The first one is this dial at the top. And it tells us whether the market is favoring buyers or favoring sellers. In this case, it's favoring sellers. So what that tells us is when we get to positioning, we're going to go from that base value we thought of earlier, which is about that 730,000, up to the top end of the range. This tells us the market has been appreciating and is moving in the right direction. So we want to see the value going up from our base value, and that's where we're going to really think about pricing at. Now, if it was on the buyer side, we'd probably say, hey, the market's having a slowdown right now. We're going to go from our base value and then maybe look lower if we needed to. In this case, we're going to go up. But before we do that, and before we start looking at pricing up from 730 to 756, we need to know what value position we need to make sure we put ourselves in so that buyers see our house and put offers in. Now, to know that, we're going to look at the understanding of what these layers show us. Now, this top layer here is basically like a pond or a lake where you get a lot of visibility, a lot of flow of water, and houses that come on the market get seen, get contracts, and then flow out. And so that flowing layer is the under contracts. Now, as homes come on the market and don't get immediate contracts, they sink a little bit lower, so they don't get quite as much visibility. And I'm sure you understand this. You don't get as many showings maybe in the second week or the third week as you did that first week. But we're still getting some showings, but it's not under contract yet. And so the second layer is the on the market and not under contract. Now, the worst case scenario is if it's been sitting for too long and no one's doing any actions like a price cut to try and buoy it up and bring it back up into the being seen territory, it can fall way down into the stagnant mass where it's really not getting any more showings and it's kind of just sitting. So in this case, though, we're really looking at doing the math of what's on the market, what's under contract, and the projections that we see at the top. So for example, we can see right here that this graph is projecting in the next 90 days that 12 homes will sell. Now, when we say sold, we mean actually closed. So what this means is those 12 homes will not just go under contract, they will actually close. So we have 6 that are currently already under contract of that 12, which gives us at this bottom one 6 new projected home sales or new under contracts that will actually close in those next 90 days. Now, the reason we use 90 days is most cases you're trying to sell a house, you want that house to close in the next 90 days. Now, there are some areas where you have a longer time to offer, then that would change the math on this a little bit and it reflects in the graph. But in most neighborhoods, you're going to probably want to sell in the next 3 months, especially if you go on the market now. So that being said, there's 6 new projected home sales, 6 under contract, and 12 that are going to be sold. So what that is telling us with these 6 new projected sales is if there's 4 currently in the market, and that's that showing level, and then on the top left, we can see there's 12 new projected homes coming in. That's 16 total homes that are going to be on the market in the next 90 days that a buyer could put an offer on. Hopefully you're following that math so far. There's 4 out available, 12 coming in new. So with the 16 homes that are going to sell and 6 new projected home sales, that tells us that if we want to be one of those 6 projected home sales, we have to be in the top 40%-ish. I mean, it's a little bit, the math's not perfect, but the top 40%-ish of perceived value for buyers to want to buy our house. If we're that top 40% value-wise, we will get offer and we will close in the next 90 days. If we are not in the top 40%, we're in trouble. Now, what does that tell us for the needed advantage we have to position ourselves in the next step? Well, there's 4 in the market now. If we add our house, and that's the 5 number, That tells us that what we need to do is make sure that we are in the top 1 or 2 homes. So there's 5 homes available. If you divide it 100% by 5, you get 20%. So you can be top number 1 or number 2 home on perceived value at the current point in the market, and then keep ourselves there to make sure we sell. Now, this is a lot of math, and you might be looking at this like, oh my gosh, but realistically, we have specific guidelines that really just help with this. Is in general, if you're in a 3 to a 7-ish as far as new projected home sales goes, you will be top 1 or 2. If you're 0 to like 3 new projected home sales, you pretty much need to be the number 1 value to make sure you're selling. If you have a large number at the bottom, we just need to be at positive advantage. Those are the general rules. But if you get really in the weeds like this with the simple math, we now know we need to be number 1 or number 2 in this case. And so we can take this now and then apply it using our understanding of going from base to high with the scattergram and make sure we sell. So let's do that now. If I look at a positioning scattergram, it's done very similar to the previous scattergram. But in this case, we're looking at the under contracts in the orange diamonds and then the for sales in the green triangles. Now, on this graph, we still have total square feet along the bottom and price on the left. We are looking now at our competition. These are the homes that are currently under contract in that buyer zone, in that price range, and those that are for sale. So if a buyer was on the market right now, they would see these 4 homes for sale. So if they're looking at those 4, and ours was the 5th one coming in, how do we make sure we put ourselves in that number 1 or number 2 value? Well, first we're going to look at that base value. So if we price here at the 3,500 in the 720, 725-ish range, well, 720 on this graph, I guess. If we price this here, okay, we can see here that there's 3 of those homes that are the green dots that are available for a buyer to buy are in the top left quadrant. Now, this top left quadrant, if I really look at it closely, we can see that these homes are higher priced and they're smaller in square footage to ours. So what that says is unless there's something super special about those homes, we would have a value advantage over that house. Meaning our house is larger for less money and you're getting more bang for your buck, higher value. Now the house to the top right quadrant is higher priced and larger in size, which would mean that kind of has a normal or makes sense relationship. Now in this case though, it's a lot higher in price than the 720 for a little bit more square footage, but still it means that, hey, that probably makes sense as far as value goes for a buyer's eyes. So in this position, we have 3 homes that we're advantage over, 1 that we're kind of tied with as far as the larger and higher price goes. So that means we are tied for first place if you kind of put this in a ranking. So in this case, we are number 1, a tied number 1 as far as value goes. So this would totally match that needed value from the previous pond example. But we also saw that dial saying we would go from base value up to the high value. So let's look at that high value now. If we move up to that high value, that 756 number, what we can see here now is 2 of those dots that were in that easily understandable advantage position in the top left quadrant have now fallen to the bottom left. That means they have a little bit more of a neutral relationship with us because they're lower price and smaller size, which kind of makes sense. Now the dot on the right now is definitely a neutral position because it's larger in size, higher in price. Cool. And we still have advantage over the other house at the 770 range, which is much smaller than our house. Now again, I'm just saying that kind of without looking at the data super in depth, just for this example so you can understand how this process works. But if we looked at it in depth and said, hey, some of these houses you might think have something special going on with them. Why is that one so high when it's such low square footage? Maybe that one's not an advantage over, but in this case, we're just kind of running with it as it is. So in this case, though, if we looked at this, we would be tied first place with 4 houses and then have an advantage over 1. And I'm saying that because the ones that are in the neutral position we're tied with, and then the one that we have advantage over, we have 1. So we are still tied first place, and this would not be a bad position to be in. Okay, but now that we see this and we're still in a first place position, what we need to understand, though, is we need to refine this a little bit. And I say that because at 756, we're not getting as many eyes on the house as we probably would want. And that all comes down to the concept of visibility. And visibility really is just because buyers will only ever buy a house that they know is for sale. What we want to do is make sure we maximize how many buyers are seeing our house by pricing out what we call bridge prices. Now, a bridge price is basically that little overlap point, as you can see here, between two buyers' ranges. It might be the low end of one buyer's range and the high end of another, and then there's a bunch of other buyers in the middle that it's kind of just fitting in the center of their range. But if we can find these bridge prices and price on those, we'll dramatically increase how many buyers see our house. And the more buyers that see our house, the more showings we have and the more potential offers we have, the more likely we are to get the highest offer because we have competition fighting for our house. So in this case, we have to think of how our search value is coded, because 756 is not a number most people are typing into the computer. It's not one of the drop-down menus in Zillow. The stronger the bridge, the better, because we can have more people looking at it. So if we drop down our thought here to 750, now we could probably do 755, but again, not quite as strong as 750. But if we bring ourselves down to 750, we put ourselves in a really unique position. And the power on this is we can look at these other homes here, these dots that are represented by the green triangle, and compare. So for example here, we're the same price, larger in square footage than this house on Rock Creek. Now this house on Rock Creek is only a 3-bed, 3-bath, and is built in 1999, so 4 years older than us. It does have a 3-car, while we had a 2-car, but we probably have more advantage over it because of the extra bedrooms and because of the little bit newness of the house, which means we're probably in an advanced position. There's nothing about this house that would make it worth more money in general, like a special value, and it's the same price for a smaller size. So in this case, we get bigger house for the same amount of money, more bang for a buck. That's another house we're advantaged over. And realistically, this house at 2,800 square feet and 740 whatever is probably one that we have advantage over too. So now dropping down to 750 put us on a super strong bridge, gave us advantage over those other two houses again, and kept us still in the neutral position with the other house out here at the almost 3,800 square footage range. So at 750, we are definitely number one, tied with this other one. If we lost the tiebreak to that one, we're in number 2 position. So we're definitely in the top 40%, guaranteed almost. And we're in a super strong bridge. We're going to see the most eyes looking at our houses. Now, this is the price that I would probably recommend for this home. And you might say, yeah, but you just showed that it works at 755 or 756. Totally true. However, at the 750 range, we're going to get the most offers, most attention, and most likelihood also for a bidding war that will pull it up. It's one of those cases that people always talk about. You don't have to be perfect in real estate because the market will fix a lot of your mistakes. That's absolutely true. But we want to be close to perfect and have the market just move us up a little bit here. Obviously, we could have priced at 720 or 730 like we showed earlier and been fine, but that's leaving money on the table. Now, if we only looked at that first scattergram, we would not have known that though. Only because we knew we could go up based on the momentum, and then looked at a graph like this, did we know we could go to 750. And that kind of value add as a real estate agent to your customers is what a lot of people are looking for when it comes to pricing guidance. Now, something like this also really works because you can see it. And the reason you can see this value is because of the Focus First software. Now, all the graphs I've been showing you throughout this presentation have been created using the Focus First software, which is a very simple Excel-based software that allows you to take MLS data from your own search and create graphs that take a complex real estate market and make it simple enough for everyday people to understand. And it's really one of the most powerful things because when clients can understand what you're showing them and you can really be their guide to the market, they tend to feel like they're on the same team and then you're working together to help them get to go where they want to go at the right time. Now you might be thinking, that's great, and this quick video understands this little piece, but software is always in depth. It takes a while to learn. What else comes with this to help me understand it? Well, the Focus First software is not alone. It comes with the software, a new CMA in-depth class to go over this entire process really like from start to finish, additional resources to help you really master that process, and it adds more features that allows you to connect with customers and get them to the point of needing a CMA. Now, the first of that is the built-in real estate review software, which is a very quick, easy kind of market update, but also a conversation built around that to help create transactions from your list. Now, along with that software, obviously there's a class with that, more resources, ebooks, templates, and marketing help. And we even have an FHFA appreciation graphs that are updated quarterly done for you, and then a template to go with that that really creates real estate review requests. You do the real estate reviews, then you have the need for a CMA. You do the CMA well using the pond and positioning, you have closed homes. This whole process and this whole software system is one of the more powerful tools out there for you to use pricing to really grow your business. And as you master this process and as you run through it time and time again, it gets really quick, really fast, and really expert level status where people will understand you are the knowledgeable, trusted advisor. And it's one of those things that we've seen people be able to grow their business and take it from, a couple transactions a month to having to hire people to join their team because they're getting overwhelmed by the amount of referrals they're getting because they're really helping customers in a unique and powerful way. So we really hope that this video helps you understand the pond and how positioning works. And if you're not a Focus First subscriber, and if you're ready to join your top performing peers that are currently winning more listings, selling more homes, and really just building a business of referrals, then we would love for you to subscribe today. Now, we are only $300 a year or $39 a month. We have a lot of flexible membership options, and we really hope that you can take advantage of this and really use the pricing in a powerful function. Now, to do this, to get access to the software, the classes, the resources, and more, all you have to do is go to focusfirst.com, click subscribe now, and get started on your pricing journey. Other than that, I hope this video helped you, and I hope that you get some value out of it. Thank you.